Hello everyone! Along with the release of Columbina, Zibai, the Horse Adeptus, will be another new character releasing in patch Luna 4. She will be the main DPS for the third lunar reaction that is being introduced to the game, Lunar-Crystallize, and she currently looks to be yet another top tier DPS. So let's take a look into her beta kit to see just how strong Zibai looks, but as always remember that this is very early information before official release, so very subject to change. Since Lunar-Crystallize is a new reaction, let's go over how it works, at least with our current knowledge of it. There's a lot of details to the reaction, but I'll just simplify it here. Normally, when an enemy is affected by Pyro, Hydro, Electro, or Cryo, and then you apply Geo, regular Crystallize will trigger, spawning a shard on the field that you can pick up for a small shield. But when you have Zibai and or Columbina on the team, you can access Lunar Crystallize. Lunar Crystallize only works when Geo reacts with Hydro, other elements do not work. Once this happens, instead of spawning a crystallized shard, three things called moon drifts spawn surrounding the enemy, each acting as a geo construct but won't be taken into account in the regular geo construct limit of 3. Once you trigger Lunar Crystallize a total of 3 times, each of the moon drifts will fire an attack onto the enemy, and this attack is called Moon Drift Harmony. So every 3 Lunar Crystallize reactions results in damage from the reaction. Anyone who applies Hydro or Geo for these 3 Lunar Crystallize reactions will participate in the reaction, and the game will calculate all the individual damage values of all the participants using their stats with this damage formula. The final damage of the reaction comes from adding up all the individual damage numbers but giving a larger share to the characters who had a higher damage number. This is exactly how Lunar Charge is also calculated, having similar properties like scaling with EM and crit and being affected by enemy res but ignoring enemy defense. And just like how characters can also deal direct Lunar Charge damage with their abilities, the same exists for Lunar Crystallize. Some characters will have certain abilities that directly deal Lunar Crystallize damage, and this damage will ignore enemy defense, scales with EM, and isn't buffed by damage percent, and it also gets a final multiplier of 1.8, just like direct Lunar Charge has a final multiplier of 3. This makes direct Lunar Crystallize damage a significant source of damage if the character has it in their kit. And lastly, things that used to synergize with just Crystallize have been updated to work with Lunar Crystallize as well. For example, Archaic Petra and Geo Resonance can activate by triggering Lunar Crystallize, and Navia Shrapnel stacks can now be obtained through the new reaction as well. With the new reaction out of the way, let's talk about Zibai's kit. She is a 5-star Geo Sword user who ascends with crit damage. She is the premier main DPS for the Lunar Crystallize reaction, enabling the reaction for the team with her special passive and buffing the base damage of it by 14% as long as she has at least 2000 defense, and she also counts for Moon Sign. She scales with defense and elemental mastery, as with her A4 passive, other Geo characters in the party will increase her defense, while other Hydro characters in the party will increase her EM. The majority of her kit is in her elemental skill. When used, she enters an enhanced state called the Lunar Phase Shift mode. During this state, she will have some resistance to interruption, enhanced geo-infused normal attacks, and access to a special skill called Spirit Steed Stride. In order for her to use this special skill, she needs 70 points of a unique resource called Phase Shift Radiance. Zibai can hold up to 100 of these points, and she gains them by just being in her enhanced state, hitting enemies with her enhanced normal attacks, and whenever the party triggers Lunar Crystallize. When this special skill is used, it deals 2 instances of damage, with the second hit being direct Lunar Crystallize damage. This portion of the skill also does more damage with Zibai's A1 passive, which activates after she uses her skill to enter her enhanced state or when the Lunar Crystallize reaction does damage. In addition, with Ascended Gleam, her 4th normal attack in her sequence will gain a second hit that is also considered Lunar Crystallize damage. So Zibai will want to normal attack 4 times in sequence, ideally not dodging while in the middle of her normal attack, so you reach and finish her 4th and final hit, and then by then she'll have enough points to use her skill. Once you use her skill 4 times, her enhanced state ends. Zibai's burst simply does 2 hits of damage, with the second hit being direct Lunar Crystallize damage. It's not that important to use every rotation, so just use it whenever it's available. And that's everything about Zibai's base kit. In terms of constellations, C1 immediately gives Zibai 100 phase shift radiance points when she first uses her skill, allows her to use 5 special skills every rotation instead of 4, and increases the damage of her first special skill she performs. C2 increases Zibai's defense when she's in her enhanced state and gives more defense scaling on her A1 passive that increases the damage of her special skill. C3 increases her skill talent level by 3. C4 makes her normal attack sequence not reset while in her enhanced state, allowing you to freely melee dodge, and increases the damage of her N4 Lunar-Crystallize hit after she uses her special skill. C5 increases her burst time level by 3, and lastly, C6 allows Zibai to gain phase shift radiance points faster, and instead of her special skills costing 70 points, she will consume all her points, and every point consumed over 70 will elevate the damage of her special skill and any Lunar-Crystallize reaction damage done by Zibai for 3 seconds. While her C1 currently looks like a normal strong early constellation, with recent information on how Zibai's A1 passive works, assuming that this is true and it remains the same, since her C2 mainly buffs her A1 passive, it isn't very strong, especially when compared to other main DPS's C2s. C4 is also negatively affected by this as well, but of course this can easily change or get clarified in the beta. For potential build options, her signature is her clear best in slot. Crit damage substat and extra defense and Lunar-Crystallize damage bonus in the passive, all good damage stats for her. While Zibai's weapon options are limited because she doesn't scale off attack or damage percent, she has a few key choices. Both Uraku Misigiri and Light of Foliar Incision are good 5-star alternatives since they both give a ton of crit, and the former also gives defense and the latter has extra EM scaling damage. For 4-star weapons, the best free-to-play option is the Not-Long Craftable Sword. It gives a ton of defense in the substat and gives even more defense after using an elemental skill. And lastly, there's the 3-star weapon Harbinger of Dawn. Because of its 3-star rarity, it has low base attack, but that doesn't matter for a pure defense scaler like Zibai, so she can take full advantage of the crit damage substat and 28% crit rate from the passive if she remains above 90% HP. This weapon is arguably her best weapon aside from the 5-star options, but it entirely depends on how long you're able to maintain uptime on its passive by being above 90% HP, and this depends on your team choice and how well you play in a fight. For artifacts, Zibai is a lunar-oriented main DPS, so she will simply use 4-piece Knight of the Skies Unveiling. For main stats, she wants Defense Hourglass, Defense Goblet, and Crit Circlet. Remember that Lunar-Crystallize damage isn't buffed by elemental damage percent, so Geo Goblet is not good on her. You can build ER on her to burst every rotation, but generally it's looking to be better to just burst every other rotation instead. Finally, Zibai's potential best teams. Zibai is almost certainly releasing with the new 4-star Itlua on her banner. Itlua is pretty much the llama of Lunar-Crystallize, easily enabling Ascending Gleam for Zibai and being a tailor-made support for her. Thus, Itlua will be present in almost all of Zibai's main teams. Then you want at least one other Hydro character to trigger Lunar-Crystallize reactions. The best option here is going to be Columbina, but you can use other off-field Hydro options that someone like Flynn's is using pre-Columbina, namely Aino, Yelan, or Xingqiu. Now for the final support slot, you have a variety of options. You can use a sub DPS oriented character like Chiori or Yelan, but while sheet DPS wise they're fine, Zibai's kit design incentivizes using her entire attack string, finishing with her N4 that deals direct Lunar-Crystallize damage. Since dashing in the middle of her attack string without C4 interrupts the sequence, instead of dodging, Zibai will generally take the hits from enemy attacks, and even though she does get some interruption resistance with her enhanced state, she ideally wants more help to ensure she gets her attacks off. Thus, C6 Goro is Zibai's current best final support slot in terms of damage because of his buffs, while also providing interruption resistance and a little healing with C4. Without C6, however, Goro performs significantly worse. Zhongli is a solid and safe option. His shield provides great defensive utility on top of giving a little extra res shred. Hydro supports like Xingqiu and Dahlia are also fine, with Xingqiu giving damage reduction and interruption resistance with his rain swords, and Dahlia giving a shield and a little attack speed for Zibai. Lastly, Inefa specifically has potential to be a solid final support as she grants a shield and EM buff on her burst and can provide extra damage with Lunar Charge. There are some big trade-offs though. Since she's Electro, Zibai will be getting fewer stats from her A4 passive. As another Moon Sign character, you lose the Moon Sign Resonance buff activated by non-Moon Sign characters, and with the introduction of off-field Electro, it can affect the rate of triggering Lunar-Crystallize reactions. And since Zibai gains points from triggering Lunar-Crystallize, which are needed to use her special skill, Inefa on the team may delay her special skill usage. Thus, further testing will be needed to verify Inefa's effectiveness with Zibai. Now, if you somehow don't get any copies of Itlua, or you just really don't want to use them, Zibai still has some team options. The most promising archetype without Itlua is Double Hydro with Columbina and another off-field Hydro support like Farina or Aino. And with just 2 Geo characters on the team, you can actually use Shilonin for her off-field res shred and healing. The important part of this team is prioritizing Columbina's off-field Lunar-Crystallize damage, where she's using the new set and a damage-oriented weapon, while the other Hydro is mainly supportive and holding Silken Moon Serenade. And surprisingly, these teams look very promising, mainly because of the current strength of Columbina. And that's everything on Zibai as of now. Overall, Zibai is looking like yet another strong lunar DPS just like Flint's and Nefer. In terms of kit design, she is kind of a mixture of both of them. Zibai's main team comps are similar to Nefer's, where the supports mainly buff her, especially Llama, just like how Itlua mainly buffs Zibai, and Zibai's playstyle is similar to Flynn's, as both enter in enhanced state and spam normal attack until you can press another special ability for a significant portion of their damage. And because of this, Zibai is pretty straightforward and simple to play, especially so since she's incentivized to not dodge, so she can finish her N4 for more direct Lunar-Crystallize damage. However, this can potentially cause some awkwardness in her gameplay. In terms of DPS performance, early beta calcs using the KQM standard suggest that she's in a similar range with the other lunar DPSs. With Columbina, her teams are ranging from 115k to 140k DPS. In comparison, Flynn's and Nefer teams with Columbina are both ranging from 130 to 140k DPS, with Nefer being able to reach around 150k DPS in sustainless teams. Zibai does have a slightly lower bottom end, and that's mainly due to Constellations being important for some of her 4-star supports like Itlua. Without Columbina, Zibai is looking similar to pre-Columbina Flynn's and Nefer teams, but will be worse without C6 Itlua. Because of this, you can argue that Zibai is looking overall worse than the other two, but at least on the high end with 4-star Constellations, the three are pretty similar. With recent info on her A1 passive being a quill buff, which makes some of her abilities in Constellations a little worse than expected, I wouldn't be surprised if she got some more positive changes in the upcoming weeks of her beta. I hope this quick overview and analysis on Zibai's beta kit was helpful to you all. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment, like the video, or sub to the channel if you enjoyed, and with that, I hope you all have a wonderful day.